agus fáilte chríal ar a Mhuile bhó Comann Mhuile is í gan a chiad chruinnechuig Bhliadhnail ac in ar bhaine. So dhéobh as, gabhí idir sochgur, gabhí draum is hígah cálaring ar son eiche bháin cótaras talent as ar nílan an bóiach.
Sinsibh is mise alasir machgile bhain, ceann suie Comann Mhuile agus í, agus bhhealum fáilte chríal a chur oribh de Còmhdhail Bhliadhnail 2021. Man táiste sin ar a Còmhdhail go ceart, bhhealum taing mhór a thost de grún duine a ha ar taic go Comann leis Còmhdhail Bhliadhnail a bliana, as i chétalbach de Ross Wilson a cúl a bhela as a Ross Mhuilech ar son na ha héinir díanaig ar son Còmhdhail a bliana chuir dóid. Bhhealum taing mhór a thost an chamití ar fat, agus go deire don luch sein, don luch ciúil agus don luch cáirí a hacing ghuiomh. Agus ma dhéirigh bhhealum taing mhór a thost ghuimhise ar son a bhí as an éisteach agus ar son taic a chumail leis a Comann. A mi go mór a dochas gan cáist a roin a hacing ghuiomh. Taing mhór.
I'm delighted to welcome you all to the 155th annual gathering of the Mull and Iona Association. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, we are unable to get together and meet as we normally do. So very enterprisingly, this year they're doing a virtual gathering. The thing about a virtual gathering is that we miss the seeing and talking to people, but on the other hand, it gives a much wider audience an opportunity to see the skills that we've got on our islands of both singers and music. So there's a much larger audience throughout the world who could tune in and see what we're showing them this evening. This virtual gathering is going to be on the 19th of February, and the other advantage of a virtual gathering is you can watch it sitting in your armchair or your sofa. And if the weather's as cold as it is today, you can have a decent dram in your hand and enjoy that as well. So welcome to this special first virtual gathering, and I'm sure you'll all have a thoroughly enjoyable evening seeing the quality and the skills that we've got amongst our people on our islands. Take care.
Hapalaíomh go mór Alasdair agus ar Lachlan. Nis Còmhdhail mewn broken dawnsaí a chuireamh son Britannia 2-step nó Idhe 3-step. Còmhdhail se chálan dawnsaí Comann Mhuile is Idhe. Siúd de bheith bhealach.
Is terug naar Gromi aan rug naar Vulin en na we gutram weer warnen tuin. Is weer in skriepak Tonjeel en Ionadach, vaarwel aan Rivin, gak min jim truim. Morgen gel Gilas, 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 morgen gel Gilas, nacht Gilunal, gaat Gil mi heen, rut a hul, gaan uit mi, zo'n ha mi gul, na molai chin. Is terug naar Rom, is mooi hele, hier moela geleefdje, en bjount een moor, skuvig garnisjach, ach jone spida, skuntuk in heen, gina keten pog. Morgen gel Gilas, 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 morgen gel Gilas, nacht Gilunal, gaat Gil mi heen, rut a hul gaan nu. Sa'n hami gul na mwlai chin. Chafi mi stryd I stachruf na glwblom, ger hyn je gul on vargach gig. Mo horis lan led marein makel, chatanig traigen verlanne G. Morun gal gilas, 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 morun gal gilas nach gilunal, chachil mi hein rudagul genud mi, sa'n ha mi gul na molai chi.
Hálaí nicht go le híanaan sin le morún gal gilas nach roi míormhaíoch. Inis tá sí nóla chluintin a aonjin na seinetar in na sáice a hacinn anoch, an gréig as an tálainn.
I am delighted to be joined by Dr. Maddie Mcarthur. I'm going to start off, Maddie, thanks very much for joining. I'm going to start off by just asking you to tell us a wee bit about who you are and where you're from.
Well, my father's family was from Iona, from Bhliadhnail on Iona, the Mcarthurs there. My mother's family was in fact from Lewis, a bit further away, but her father was a school teacher, and so he taught in various places, ending up in Argyll. So she was brought up in Tainilt and went to Oban High School, where she and my father met as school pupils. And so after they married though, and my father had left working in Glasgow, they moved to St Andrews. My father was appointed to the library in St Andrews University. And so I was born and brought up there, about as far east as you can get. This is on a straight line pretty well across to Iona and the far west. So that's the connection. It was the paternal family home. Lewis was a bit too far to go, unfortunately. We only went 1 or 2 times when I was a teenager, but we went to Iona almost every year from when I was in a pram.
And was it during one of those summers that you first heard about Comann, Mhuile, agus Idhe?
It probably was, because there would be conversations with others with those people who lived there, and who went in particular to the annual gatherings from Iona, and also others would come, of course, from Glasgow or the Central Belt or elsewhere on the mainland, who were, like my father, had been born there. But my father talked about it anyway, even though we were away over in the east, because when he was a student in Glasgow in the 1930s, he joined up with other Highlanders, and I'm sure he took out his life membership as a young man, or perhaps when he got his first job at Glasgow University Library, in fact. But he certainly had a life membership all the time he was in St Andrews, even though it was a bit far to go regularly to any meetings. He did go, he and my mother, and in fact I went with them to the 1966 gathering for the centenary. I mean, I remember the enormous platform party. It was so impressive. But Glasgow was like a mini Highlands by the time, certainly in the early 20th century and from the 1800s, when people began to migrate from all over, and particularly from Argyll down to the Clyde area. So my understanding is it was no wonder these associations began to be formed in the city.
I'm sure that many of the people listening will be aware of your wonderful writing on the history of Iona. I know that you've also done a fair bit of work on the history of the association itself. I wonder if you could tell us a wee bit about that. Yes,
well, it was when I was doing the books about Iona itself, because that whole story of the parish and the crofting landscape hadn't really been told from the beginning onwards. It had been touched on in other books, but it became clear to me that the locals really were interested in learning and in discussions and in improving themselves mentally and as well as socially. And in fact, I came across the obituary for a man called Malcolm Ferguson, nicknamed Calamban in Iona. But he apparently was one of the original members of the Mull and Iona Association, and the last of the band of young men. This is when he died in 1920. The last of the band of young men who were the founders of the association, which had its origin in the mutual improvement societies, which met from time to time in Buidhnean and Iona. And these were, as I said, probably set up by the ministers, and often just using a room in a school to have discussions, to read books and exchange books, talk about, perhaps give talks to each other about their own lives. The merchant seamen who'd come back would talk about their voyages. People who had particular interests would talk about what they had learned. They would also discuss matters. I'm quite sure they talked about crofting legislation when that was in the news, because they read newspapers. There were newspapers on the go in the 19th century. And they would have addressed local issues, the price of cattle, or what was happening about the grazing, or who had the seaweed rights, or who had fallen out with whom over the seaweed rights, and perhaps repairs to the landing place. Just issues of concern. It was a kind of debating club, discursive and literary, and just to further their own education. So it was very much a mutual improvement. And that, and so when I read up more about the origins of the association in Glasgow, it wasn't just, I could understand it was to try and be a focus for newcomers to the city to be able to meet up socially, joining songs and ceòls and so on, as those happened in houses or wherever in due course, when places like the Highlanders Institute was set up. But it was also to help them in other ways, help them find their feet. I think financially too, the money was raised to make sure that nobody who arrived from the islands, from particular Mull and Iona islands, were homeless or friendless or had difficulty finding a job. It had a real kind of social reason for existing beyond the sort of entertainment, if you like. And those associations, there were dozens and dozens of them as the 19th century wore on. But the Mull and Iona was one of the first, 1866. So it does have quite a long and honourable history.
Yna siami dal hain moglian yn tyfach lifin. Os drweich na chrome, sian y glawn yn Mhuile, o'r habian a'ch ies iawn, a na haid nyns na cael chenis fo'i cherntyl, am ni glawn yn Mhuile, tyfach lifin. Falle curien reich chin your mulach nem piaun a yes eun en daim fruichen riaun sketta hulig tale pechan eich gun glaun a chofaiach rim glaun tyflach lifin an y dyn i'ch hwg hein alles chòmhradh sy'n iawn. Tra'n iawn mafer bydwch nios giawn. A chofad y fes galeg ar sgrifydd lep iawn. Fi mi molech moch iawn. Tyfach lifain. Dabair.
Sienw hen a chara. Han tuafis je hannytarin is lwciw loca acin agus ha sin sons gan bí ar crunnechuig a tors arst úlar gaif gach bliana. Inist, ha Robbers McCloud agus a Comann a dolachlik in sette animal after the games. An orshin ha Kirsty Renton a dolagal ha Chiel McGrimmin am an alabish. Well nach rosin sálaigte. Pang mhór ga rabarst is kirsti. Fé mi dúhí go má gascal a gálas té go uavich ginnagin gon lawyer sein. Ha mimi spens acin inis ir a níl. Chai seo ilmig an an croig. Pan chudamar leine ha seo, ha sin na gamasir ericad a hócal son buidhnean ionadach. Ha gach duine úne chuirseachad gur súr holach son na project a seo a chur dói. Ba ga chóma ericad a hócal gan na buidhnean ionadach a seo tron cheangal a harí eichgin go híseal as an description.
Thanks very much for your time today. And can you just kind of start off by introducing yourself and telling us where you're from?
I'm Gordon Buchanan and I'm from Tobermory on the Isle of Mull.
And I was just wanting to find out a bit about your kind of family history on Mull and how you sort of came to Mull.
We moved there in 1979. So I was 7 when we arrived. I kind of started primary 3 in Tob. Prior to that, we lived in Dumbarton, but we had sort of our family had a relationship with Tob, sort of, I think maybe going back to the 50s. My nana and granda used to have a caravan at the top of the Spray, and they had it for as long as I could remember. So it kind of like when my mum thought maybe kind of bringing us up in a housing estate in Dumbarton wasn't the best place for us, she decided to move up to Tob with us all, thankfully.
So did you visit Mull sort of before moving up yourself?
Yeah, as far as I can remember, we've always sort of gone up to Mull, and I think maybe it's kind of a part of that novelty, because that was our sort of the only holiday that we'd ever go on. That novelty stayed with me. I always sort of, when I kind of arrive back in Tob, I just feel kind of like, it sort of feels like a sort of not a holiday town, but it just feels like it's a place that I can really relax. And I've always felt that over the years, and with work and sort of as life has got busier, and I suppose having kids, I just have this sort of kind of relaxation that I get when I arrive in Mull, but particularly when I arrive in Tob. It's just like it's as if someone switched off my stress buttons.
What kind of things did you do then if you weren't at school at the weekends? What would you get up to?
When I think it was maybe about 12, Nori and we went over to when there used to be the trekking centre that McDougall's had, and we had like saved up some cash, so we said, right, like when we've got some money, let's go horse riding. And like from the first moment, I sort of fell in love with horses and being on horses, and it just felt sort of removed from everything else that was going on. It was almost sort of the horses kind of gave this of an opportunity for a completely different sort of way of living, a completely different interest, sort of, what I'd normally be doing. So, my friends were going over to the football pitch and playing football or just knocking about the street. I would go over to the horses. So the kind of loner in me, that was sort of, I was able to indulge that, and I was completely content. Did
growing up on Mull and sort of wildlife on Mull, did that kind of spark your desire to go into wildlife filmmaking? And
it definitely, I think being outside all of the time was something that I loved. So I always sort of, just loved being out in the hills or down on the, on the shoreline, being with the horses and sort of just sort of being outdoors was something that I really loved. But then when I was about maybe 15 or 16, I was thinking about, right, okay, what am I going to do after I leave school? And until I was about 15, I just wanted to work with horses. I thought I could become a riding instructor. My dream was to become like an international show jumper. That's what I kind of wanted to do. And at that time, I thought, okay, I felt that I could do it. It was like I could, just with a bit of luck and meeting the right people and working hard enough, that's something that could have happened for me. But then working with horses for my whole life, it wasn't something that kind of financially was probably going to provide me with kind of a lucrative future. But then I kind of didn't think of it in terms of money as what's going to get me the most money. Not far from it. I just thought, okay, what do I want to do with my life? I suppose really that sort of lightning bolt moment when I was working in the captain's table, and through working with Anne, I found out what her husband at the time, Nick, did for a living. And he was always this quite exotic character. He'd sort of come and go. And when she told me, he was a wildlife cameraman, and I knew that he was traveling all over the place, I just thought, that's incredible. It kind of tapped into everything that I was interested in. So, exploring places and animals and, wild places. And so I kind of really just chatted him up when he came home. And I was just fascinated by, his life, the things he surrounded him by. And then he had boxes of cameras, of TV cameras. And I was like, first time I saw a film camera. And then eventually he just sort of offered me a job. He had a contract in Sierra Leone in West Africa, and he needed sort of, I was going to say an assistant. I wasn't his assistant, but it's kind of just a general dog's body to do everything and anything. So that was it, yeah. And when he offered me the job, I literally went into school next day and said, I told him that that was it, I was done.
Just going back to Mull again, is there any particular kind of favourite spots you've got for wildlife watching on Mull?
Favourite spots on Mull, Loch na Ceòl, I think is really hard to beat. I just love that, the whole sort of stretch, actually from Knock all the way kind of around to the Greeben Rocks. I really love that area because it's good for otters and eagles, but also just the scenery is really so spectacular.
What does it mean to you to sort of be from Mull?
What it means to me to be from Mull, I think it's just having a sense of belonging to a place, and I suppose kind of belonging to a people or a community, and that is, that's what kind of community is the thing that kind of binds us all together, and a sort of sense of belonging, and that's sort of where people feel safe and secure. And I think sort of feeling having that sense of belonging to a place like Mull, that kind of does make me feel secure and safe. And no matter where I am in the world, no matter where I live at the moment, I always sort of know Mull's never that far from my thoughts, because it's always this sort of haven. It's a place that I can go, in turbulent times, and you can go. There always just feels like a refuge. And it's not just a place. I think the community as well. It's sort of it's you slip into a different mode. It's just kind of that real sense of being at home. It doesn't have to be your physical home where you live, but just as long as it has that feeling.
Fiona ni agah a bríon ni Gordon Buchanan MBE in sin, hang mhór ga Gordon son a chuit úne a thurscain. An is tá Megan agus Sarah nakin von Ceolach talentach bhí cían a Buidhnean. Hapalaif Gamor Nianan. Nisht, gaat de geur glasig sloi staat er kosher galig en Nilan Vulich. Show the shine an traile runrig, agus Shalian Alin an Còmhdhail.
Life, now, for it's Spiagul romi rasharish, kosher kashrus deren trai, lemo galaib damo fokit, firimo helvanemo grai. Spiagul romi rasharish, kosher kashrus deren trai, lemo galaib fokit, helvanemo grai.
First of all, I would like to thank Sheila Sinclair for not only providing the backing for this song, but also for organising the whole recording process. I have heard Tuireann an Train described as the greatest lament written in Argyllshire Gaelic. In broad terms, traditional Gaelic laments are associated with loss. Loss of life is a common theme, but very often acts of heroism are also highlighted, and comfort is sought for those who are left behind. We have felt great loss during 2020 as the unseen enemy, COVID-19, has caused deep disruption to our lives. There is a sense in which, though we may not all have lost our lives, a great part of our lives has been taken away from us, and we will never get it back. Loss of freedom, loss of contact with family, friends, and work colleagues. In some cases, loss of work. A measure of comfort, of course, would not go amiss. But in a more positive vein, 2020 was not without its heroes in the shape of medical and nursing staff, social care staff, and all who have cared for us, whether we fell prey to the virus or not. Those who have worked round the clock to develop new vaccines and restored hope for the future. Tuireann an Train embraces many of these themes. The final verse is a prayer of hope for the future, and I commend it to you all.
Small
peng mhór son sin a bhunachaí. Ahead is ní na hacin inis, Mhuile agus Iona Patrick. Chai seo ilmig an Idhe, ach bhéidir sin maith an-asgaidh.
I am Margaret Rhoda Ann McInnes. I was born on the island in 1940, the 26th of December 1940, at the farm on the west side of the island.
All of your family are from Iona, is that right, Willa?
A great number of them on my father's side, and some of the very much younger generations are still around, which is rather nice. The north end of the island, and the family who had the local post office, the Mhuile family and the Mcarthur's family, and they were linked too with us. When we were just towards the school leaving age, some of us 14 at that time, and the secondary schools were upgraded to a higher leaving standards. But and we had a careers officer, and I thought I would like to be a nurse. So I settled on that section of the health service, and I've never really regretted it here. And it was very, very, very interesting.
Do you remember much about your first gathering?
Yes, I do. It was just beginning to take off, you see. Of course, there were concerts, and sometimes you just went to the concert because the dance was really for older people.
Right.
You know, but you went sometime just that sort of thing. It would have been the 1960s, because I had a great help from my cousin through the family, Sheila McPhail. Her father was the honorary vice president. And she just said to me one day, we all met up in Glasgow, you see, socially. We had tea and that sort of thing, and going out for walks, and there were parties in people's houses. And she said to me, I've been meaning to ask you if you would like to join the Mull and Iona, become a member. And I said, well, that's very good. I said, I'll think about it. And she said, I'll tell my father and he'll sponsor you. And he did. He was very, very helpful. Other areas, other clubs had formed, you know, and they were all formal evenings. And it would have been very sort of, well, not insulting, but it would have been a bit much just to appear in anything. But if you could present yourself in the required rigour, that was what you were meant to do.
What would you say are your favourite memories of the gathering?
Just the wit and the humour, because it was very, very much to the forefront. It really was. It was very, very good.
And you enjoyed meeting people there?
Oh yes, very much so. There was one very strong character. He went off to the Gaelic-speaking areas of Canada. He was at Achille one night, and a very fluent spoken Canadian in Gaelic said, "How long have you been over here?" And he said, 6 weeks. He said, well, you've picked up the Gaelic in no time at all.
And you like the bagpipes?
Oh, I love the bagpipes. I just love them.
And there's always bagpipes at the gathering.
Yes.
So would you say that was one of your favourite things about
Yes,
going together?
yes. And I love the accordion.
And do you like a dance as well?
Oh yes, I love dancing. I love dancing. And the song and poetry. Because Gaelic's poetical in song and in poem. It's very good. There's almost a fairy-like aspect to the Gaelic culture. You know, it's amazing.
Ba chóma clointin fo roda an shit, a si na neach taic go bhláitir gan cruinneach Bhliadhnail. Ha Joey sacin in ish gile mesel a fibs, mar sin seo ferrák le bunchinas do dhíe le set a fúrst.
Hallo dinne, ha mijn dagelijks gewilsje gedoild, agus gewil Joe Haley, a dagelijke vannacht. Ha mijn dagelijke post me ga in a fib a show, agus ha mijn dagelijke haasje hek le Joe in a rein, Morrachadh McFarlane, an bar fiala bost, agus je sin maal na mare. Agus an ocean ha mijn dagelijke jig nu ga, agus kunnen me kriechad le rille, veel Alex C. McGregor. agus mud an tang don a Comann ar son seo a chumail. Sláinte.
Hi, hello Dunya, it's Misha Bethan. Hi everyone, my name's Bethan Sexton. I just want to say a big thank you to the Mull and Iona Association for having me perform in their virtual gathering for this year. I'm really excited to do so. And I'm going to be singing Éistealbheith an Leoas for you. So ha mis dal bhí sein Éistealbheith an Leoas. Ha muinagus fiant an an shit, go chloideach túr so hard. Ha cúcha hir go dúbhlaiad, ach noch na join na park. Ha sleep cheered of or here, let dive knock a get am bad. Ach is jovek an Leoas, stu hagos of other Gets frasach voor en jouwdag, a tosh hiuen de get och noak. Ik blas a kren ek biantin, an ik jela chast och hoin. Bin kitchen kaif ja tochen noch, gat hoppe dag non kuist. Le bratach rieva boiach, sna storage havohuas. Is imig fesked gunnach, hook me huach a leid och lean. Njon gierach suas do hualen, le mo na buach a len ganolach, it ogreien le crolei. Mun cuair do viola wanya, viag na hein a lein an theim. Nur lagen sies go suagra, en moch lusach ans an rug. Vig mi kushna mo voren, agus nach es nam smoen. Schenk jolle vig nam chlusen, ans an neie sir gathur. Gam harlach hier nam brødren, an karriere sanusk. Ha moinjag spiant an ogan shit, go chloideach túr so hard. Ha cúcha hir go dúbhlaiad, ach noch nan join na park. Ha sleep cheered of or here, let dive knock a get am bad. Ach is jovek an Leoas, stu hagos of other Tá pléir.
Ceòl leon sin bó ceilár a fíb agus Bethan Sexton a sein. Ámar son de bhrocan dawnsaí a chur ar a bhríos dus an Canadian Barn Dance leis a chálan dawnsaí cum an Mhuile is Idhe. mar an rud a chasan na dolan siad, féimig bhfuil rud an céir orst. Mas creachnig a chudam, seo aca finlí gréam a bhuanig cóarpis Mulle is Idhe 2021.
What do you think about the association's role today and in the future?
Well, it still has the. I know that the winter programme of events every month have gone now. We live in a different world, really. But first of all, to keep the gathering is really important, and it has a nice informal feel and a real sense of people still coming from the mainland, from the islands or from other parts of the mainland to Glasgow for it. And it highlights singers and musicians and the song culture from the islands. And also less heralded, really, is that there's a regular support for local issues, for what's happening, for the prizes are being given, the money is donated to a whole range of housing and educational and leisure and economic causes on Mull and Iona. So that's great. It still has that combination of being a focus for people to come together, and but also to be aware of what's going on back in the islands. Now, my friends, in closing, please let me ask of you, to homeland, friends and language, be ever staunchly true. The ties that run from Glasgow to sister isles are long. Grasp them in firm friendship, keep them ever strong. So in a way, that final verse of Angus's, written a long time ago, sums up what I think the association is still doing.
Thank fór dar Idhe go bhfad ar san cuid sin na cainnichan agus an geolas bearteach acu sé rain còmhradh umsaciú agus an rís an locéisteach an dú. Thanks very much for sharing some of your memories and that amazing knowledge that you have of our area with us today.
Well, I owe it all to the previous people who went before, one has to say again. It's really, I'm just passing it on. Okay, Ceart, more in time.